Okay, so I'm going to give the floor to Tony now. Tony, part of his colourful history, he was a trading standards officer, which in the United Kingdom is incredibly important because that's the lead agency for enforcing key aspects of consumer law. And I worked very closely with trading standards officers around the country at one point when, after we dealt with gambling, we tried to deal with the online sale of alcohol and tobacco, because at that point, none of the supermarkets were doing any age checks before they sold alcohol or tobacco over the internet. And I went to see the directors, main board directors of 2 major supermarket chains, and said to them, why aren't you doing it? Face to face, in a room. They said, we don't need to, because our drivers will not hand over the cigarettes or the alcohol when they deliver it unless somebody has got proof of age to hand. I said, so you're telling me that a driver who's probably parked illegally and has to take a package up to the 20th floor of a tower block is going to do that, and then he's going to wait for somebody to come and produce a document proving that they're an adult before they hand over the tobacco or the alcohol? And they said, yes, that's exactly what all our drivers do. What neither of those guys knew was that one of my best friends was the National Trade Union official who organised drivers for those supermarket chains, right? In the Transport and General Workers Union, as it then was. So I relayed this story to my friend, the national organiser of the workers who drove these trucks, and he just burst out laughing. He said, no, that never happens, never happens. So all we were saying to the supermarkets was, you should do checks at delivery, but you should also do a check at the point of sale if it's online. And that was the only point we were trying to do. And people like Tony, in his earlier life, were key to making all that sort of stuff happen. Anyway, there you go. There's a build-up for you.
Actually, I think that's a measure of not success, though.
No, they did eventually start doing it.
But thanks for bigging me up as though it was a success. But brilliant. Yes, thank you very much for today and for everybody. And I'm your last speaker, you'll be pleased to hear, before we wrap up. And yeah, my name's Tony Allen. I'm the Chief Executive of the Age Check Certification Scheme, and we test that this stuff works. So all the things we've been talking about today on age estimation, age verification, parental consent, our role is an independent third-party certification scheme is to test that it actually works. So we don't provide any of the kit, and thankfully we haven't got the problem of actually working out how you build it and how you do all that. We've just got the problem of working out how you test it, which in itself is quite challenging. And my bit to talk about today is how, as part of this whole program, we're looking at the area of standards, audit and regulation, and how that will apply to the ecosystem that will operate for age verification and parental consent. So, first principle of this is that we are attempting to do this so it is international first. And although in the project bid we did limit it to the European Union, very much and very clearly the feedback that we've had from the platforms and from streaming companies and is that although the European Union has got a key role in leading on some of the areas of data protection and standards, international is what they're after. Something that operates across the world is what they're after. So we've been working very closely with the International Standards Organization and looking at how we can develop standards in this space. One thing that might come as a surprise to people is that there aren't any. There are no international standards for age assurance or age verification. There are no international standards for how you go about doing parental consent. Despite the plethora of standards there are about digital identity, about identity proofing and everything associated with mobile driving licenses and all that sort of thing, there's nothing at all about age assurance. So I've got a degree of sympathy when it comes to the people who have to implement this stuff in the platforms and information society services when they say, well, how do we know any of this stuff works? How do we know that it's made to an appropriate standard when there aren't any standards and there aren't any rules and there aren't anything to apply to? So that's what we're aiming to try to solve. So we are working very closely with ISO. I won't go through the coding of ISO. If anybody's been involved in standards, you'll know that everything comes with a code. But it is the working group 5 of the team that deal with identity and privacy management. And we've got a project which is being led by BSI in the UK, and a project team led underneath that which I chair, which includes members from the euCONSENT consortium, and they are working currently on the development of a working draft international standard. It's a high-level framework, so the aim at this stage is to be able to develop a document which sets out the broad characteristics of what age assurance is and what the components of that are. And then from that high-level framework, we can then look at how you develop detailed standards. So you can break out from that as sub standards or working documents or technical requirements or things like that. But until you've got that high-level framework document, it doesn't have a house within which you can sit those technical requirements. So it is called ISO IEC PWI 7732. PWI stands for Preliminary Work Item in ISO speak. So when that actually becomes a standard, it won't have that number, it'll have a different number. No idea what that number will be, it's allocated by ISO centrally, but you might have something like ISO IEC 27995 or something like that, whatever number that ends up being for age assurance system. It is specifically for assurance. And what it's currently looking at, and I use the word currently advisedly because this is very much a working document, very much live, very much changing on a regular basis. We had another meeting of the working group on last Monday. We've got another one coming up a week on Monday. But it currently basically takes a twin track approach, which is it breaks up the function of having age assurance components, i.e. the methods, the techniques, be it database lookup, age estimation, whatever component of the age assurance system, and the age assurance processing system. So that's how you gather that and communicate it to the relying party. And so that equalizes all of the components. Within the system, whatever the components are, whatever the aspects are, that equalizes them in the eyes of the standard. So you have this open approach to being able to effectively have any process that could give you age assurance. And what we then do is we then look at the levels of confidence that those age assurance components can provide. And we're looking at 5 levels of confidence: 0, basic, standard, enhanced, and strict. What the standard doesn't do or won't do and is not intended to do is tell you which one you need to use. That's not the role of the standards body. That's the role of a policymaker. Now that policymaker could be a regulator, it could be a government, or it could just be the company. So if you are Google or Facebook or wherever, if there isn't any regulatory minimum requirement, you could say, well, we're going to apply a standard level of age assurance to our system. That's for the policymaker. What the standard will describe is what that means. So it will describe what the characteristics of that are. So what is meant by a standard level of age assurance, what is meant by an enhanced level, and what is meant by a strict level. So that they can confidently state what they mean by that, and they can refer to an international standard. And then all of the individual companies that are doing age assurance systems, either in-house or as third parties, or all the companies that are part of that ecosystem, can say, we will provide you with an age assurance system that is capable of delivering a result to an enhanced level of confidence. And the whole certification process and accreditation process that sits with that ecosystem would go alongside it. And how would we test that? Well, we're planning to use an entirely existing process for how you would test that, which is called the common criteria. For the techies in the room, something you should be relatively familiar with. And this is how you test biometrics, cybersecurity, other IT standards, IT security components. And it basically looks at the different levels of assurance that you can have. Some of you may have already spotted the challenging aspect of this we have is that we use assurance in at least 3 different contexts so far already, and we've got to think very carefully about how we explain that in the standard. So that's the work that's going on with the standard. It is currently in working draft. The plan is that it will be available to the ISO by October, and it will be out for consultation internationally through the national standards bodies shortly thereafter. And there will be a vote on the working draft, and then there will then be a redraft of that, taking into account comments and suggestions that are made as part of that international process. If you would like to be involved in that, you are very welcome. If you are in the UK, you can contact me to get involved in that. If you are outside of the UK, then you have to contact your local national standards body. So people like DIN in Germany, for instance, or what's the one in Greece called? We're not sure, are we? A lot in Greece. But wherever you are, contact your national standards body. I won't mention that. And they will get you involved in it at a local level. If you have any difficulty contacting your national standards body, then do get in touch with me, and I will do my very best to facilitate that. But that will give you a chance and a voice to contribute to that, or through me and the team as well. Also, just briefly covering data protection and privacy. Consumer and user confidence is critical to success for this project. If you haven't got consumer and user confidence in the way that their data is being handled and managed, they won't use it, they won't engage with it, they'll block, they'll cause problems and difficulties to the platforms and the services that they're trying to use. So you've got to have consumer and user confidence. And as we've heard earlier from Anna and the team at the Irish Data Protection Commissioner's Office, it's critical to confidence in the marketplace. And so we have been working very closely with the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK, and we have got the first certification schemes to be approved under Article 42 of GDPR. That's the first across the whole of Europe and in the UK. That covers the data protection and privacy for age assurance services. So the things that would be expected to be done as part of that process have now got a certification scheme. And we're in early discussions with the European Data Protection Board and the national data protection regulators about how you extend that to the EU. Very unfortunately, the UK decided to leave, and so we've got to go through a process of getting that extended across the EU. But the plan would be that there will be a data protection seal available for age assurance systems as a part of this work. So, very quickly at the end, that's the progress that we've made so far in relation to the standards and the work, and you've heard about all the research. There's certainly a lot of activity going on with this. Just remains for me to say before I hand back to John to close out that it is fantastic to see such a high level of engagement across not only the people that are here in the room, which is a full room, even though we're socially distanced, it's a full conference suite here, but also the 200 or so people that are online and have been contributing to the debate as we go through, but also to the really high level of organisations that have engaged with this, as I think Ian said earlier on, for such a relatively small budget, small programme of a European Commission. We have got the likes of Lego, Facebook, Google, Twitter, TikTok, all of them engaged across this. It underlines the importance of the project. And lastly, just really as the Deputy Programme Director, to thank Kostas as a Programme Director for his kind hospitality here in Greece, and for all the arrangements that have gone. It has been fantastic, so well done to you.
Many thanks, Tony, for that.